Dear friends, this is Günther Fehlinger Jan here, host of the Günther Fehlinger podcast show and also activist for Ukraine in the EU and NATO, and of course the chairman of the Austrian Committee for NATO enlargement for Austria and Ukraine and Kosovo and Bosnia and the European Union. Now ahead of the 4 years tragic anniversary of the start of the full-scale invasion, I would like to call on everybody here in power to liberate Crimea. It started in Crimea, it will end in Crimea by our victory. No concessions, no submission, and no kind of land further attached with millions of people given to Putin's slavery. We must, on the contrary, we must liberate Crimea. Let's come to what really matters. And this is that we as Europeans give the weapons and the money to Ukraine to do that, and the political backing. Because I don't want to hear anything like I'm afraid of nuclear weapons or some nonsense and Putin basically freezing and paralyzing the European political structures. We don't need America. If America is now liberating Iran, that's already something extremely important in the global war against Putin, and let them do that. But we must use the time and our money, our resources and our industrial capacity to provide Ukraine the backing and the means, the tools financially and the weapons to liberate the Crimean Peninsula and reintegrate it into Ukraine and into NATO, the European Union, and of course the Euro, and as well to make clear that we raise the Ukrainian and the NATO flag over Sevastopol this year. Over Sevastopol our flags will fly and Putin's Russian flag will be trampled on, and he can run, and all his minions, his enablers, his sycophants can run out of Crimea. Now, I would recommend them ahead of this decisive month when there is the 4 years tragic anniversary of the full-scale invasion. But let's not forget, it's as well since 2014, now 12 years of the occupation, illegal occupation of Crimea, and of course of the start of all the tragic mistakes of the West to allow Putin this absolutely disaster which he has done from the 26th, 27th of February in a response to Ukraine wanting to join us and deciding the people after 91, 99, 2004, 2014, again the people as today have decided that Ukraine shall be in NATO and the European Union. And I miss the calls from European leaders that Ukraine is welcome. Ursula von der Leyen said it, that Ukraine is welcome in the European Union 2027. Yes, very good. And then Merz and Stocker said, no, that's too fast. So much for boldness, so much for Havel's speeches. Yeah? If you're not ready to understand what it needs to be done, it's the declarative intent, Ukraine in the EU. It's the declarative intent of Ukraine in NATO, which matters now from our leaders, and as well the tool when complete political membership might be really very fast for 2027 that even I have to concede. But ultimately, it's a contractual relation. If the EU leaders want, we can conclude a contract and ratify it very fast, as we have done in the past. We can be fast if we want, and wonders like Mercosur and like India can happen. So let's hope for that. But nevertheless, the real tool to do it is the euro, and the euro can be introduced in Ukraine immediately. That's just 3 months of preparation. The digitalization of Ukraine is far advanced in the monetary system. It's a switch in the central bank. It's a political decision in Brussels. It's a question of a little bit nicer, compliant. Mrs. Lagarde is anyhow on the way out. She was not very good, and I'm happy she is gone. But she was opposing, of course, Eurozation of Ukraine. But that's what we can really do. And of course, we can really do Ukraine in Schengen and in the EU Customs Union. And if you're honest, this is already a lot. the euro, Schengen, the customs union, we can do that. And of course, then we can put Ukraine into the political union, maybe for the vote of the European Parliament only in 2034. But the magic and the significance of the euro, of Schengen, of the customs union is already there. And then actually we could allow the Ukrainians to vote as well in the European Parliament 2029. Yes, and that's all possible. And it's much cheaper to do it because in many of my videos, I've argued already that we anyhow will have to give Ukraine whatever it takes. We luckily have now frozen the central bank assets in order to have some collateral. But of course, even this all over 320 billions of Russian assets in the European Union is by far not enough to what it takes to pay for all the costs of reconstruction, compensation and integration and building Ukraine up as a European member state. And obviously this is much more expensive. And I called on many occasions here on this podcast, on this video already for Eurobonds. Now we did 90. Ultimately it will be 1 trillion needed. So get it done. And of course, it's much better to do it on the basis of Ukraine having the euro, because do you want to have a relation like with Turkey, where Erdogan has now dropped the lira to 50 to the euro inside the customs union? That's of course not very good and actually a theft. Yeah? And so it's much better to have Ukraine very close in the European economic system with the euro, with Schengen, with the customs union, and best of course also politically fully integrated. And be sure that they will be very pro-European in their voting patterns. Yes, good. I was clear on that one. But the point is that we have to make sure that Ukraine is able to liberate the Crimean Peninsula. And that's what it all is about. So how to get there? I think it's very clear. We basically give the weapons and the political green light to Ukraine. So what weapons we have? We have weapons because we are building and buying now a lot of weapons for air defense, for rearmament. Gradually our industry is responding to the demand and we have more on the delivery. But is Russia attacking the European Union or NATO? Actually, no, and I don't think they will do it because they need everything to defend their gains in Ukraine. And so we take all of that towards Ukraine and we allow the Ukrainians to use it. And we are no longer submitting to the idea that they will throw nuclear weapons around the Russians, because they have not done in the last 4 years. And we have much better working nukes than them. And it will not make any sense militarily to use them, and the logic of MAD so applies always. And so ultimately I think it's time to liberate Crimea, and it's technically also fully feasible. The thing is, with Crimea it's very difficult to hold. You cut the supply lines through the Donbass and Mariupol, and you basically attack it via the sea and with drones. And then, of course, you start a physical effort to go over the isthmus and to liberate it city by city. Simultaneously as well, the Crimean people must rise as well. And here the logic applies. And that's what I'm calling for. A complete and open rebellion of the people of Crimea. And of course, the march through the isthmus. And then, of course, a massive drone attack to end the last remaining Russian pockets of resistance on Crimea. And then we have won the war, Russia will be defeated, and Putin will fall. That's the logic of it all. And that's what I want to see in 2026, and that's what I'm calling for. Have I been clear? Are there any questions, any misunderstandings? I hope not, but that's what I will argue the whole next week, and as long as it takes, this is the best way forward. Thanks a lot. Slava Ukraine, for liberation of Crimea and for victory and no concessions anymore. Thank you. Bye.